Elon Musk touched down in Israel this morning after accusations of anti-Semitism on his platform X. Musk met with Benjamin Netanyahu, where Israel's prime minister took Musk on a tour of Kibbutz Kfar Aza, one of the sites of the October 7th attacks by Hamas.
The two also spoke on Twitter Spaces. Here's some of that.
Yeah, it's important to pair firmness in taking out the terrorists, those who wish or intent on murder, and then at the same time to then help those who remain, which is also what happened in Germany and Japan.
Exactly right.
It's interesting because this is quite a rare thing in history. Usually, the victor pillages the loser, and if you look at it after World War I, the Treaty of Versailles was a big mistake. And it created immense bitterness in Germany, and it's part of what led to World War II. And then World War II, that people realized, listen, we actually need to rebuild the economies, and instead of punishing them. And so, you had the rebuilding of Japan, rebuilding of Germany and much of Europe, and then we've had peace and prosperity for a long time.
I think that this is possible, but it has that small prerequisite. I'm saying small, and I don't really mean small. It's a big job of getting rid of Hamas, which we will. And remember that what Israel suffered on this ignominious day of October 7th was proportionately like 29 11s. So, when people tell us, make a ceasefire.
Sure.
And Hamas says, well, if we're still around, we're going to do it again and again and again. That's a direct quote.
Yes.
Okay. So would you make?
You don't need to read between the lines.
No.
You just read the lines.
They're quite explicit about it.
Yes.
So obviously we can't do that any more than America would make a ceasefire with Al Qaeda after 9/11.
Yeah.
And this is 29/11. So they have to go, and they will go. I'm talking about combatants. I'm talking about terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about terrorist chieftains. But then I think we can build a different future with the Palestinians.
What's your reaction to that, Jessica?
I find it incredibly strange to hear someone like Netanyahu, who has the blood on his hands of 20,000 people since October 7th, giving a lecture about people who are supposed murderers and terrorists. He is a murderer and a terrorist. And then the other reaction I have is, why is a billionaire conducting foreign policy on behalf of the United States? No one appointed Elon to this position. No one elected him to this position. He's just a powerful guy who runs a media company. And that means he's allowed to have this conversation with Netanyahu. I get that you can have a conversation with whoever you want, but let's not be mistaken. Netanyahu is only having this conversation with Elon Musk because of the outsized power Elon Musk has, because he has hoarded billions of dollars. And so I really think that all of this is incredibly dystopian and incredibly disappointing. If there's one thing that's good that comes out of this, it's how critical Elon Musk has been of Israel. I just wish he was critical of Israel to Benjamin Netanyahu's face or to his voice through Twitter Spaces. I wish Elon Musk had said, Netanyahu, I'm going to quote myself from earlier and ask you, for every Hamas member you kill today, how many more do you create? For every Palestinian you kill today, how many more do you create? That's something that Elon Musk said. Elon Musk has been very critical of Israel, just not to Netanyahu's face, apparently. So the whole thing is just incredibly disappointing in my eyes. What's your reaction, Robby?
Yeah, you're right. I really enjoyed that clip from Elon when he talked about the dangers of going too far here and actually creating more terrorists than you're taking out of the equation based on what's going on in Palestine. I thought that was a pretty appropriate warning. Look, I think Elon's... Frankly, you could say, what right does he have? He's just a random guy with a lot of money. I've thought in the past, fine, but his foreign policy judgments have been more in line with me on the kind of anti-interventionist right, the kind of friendship I'm trying to have with anti-interventionist people on the left. Elon has brought some of that energy to the Russia-Ukraine conversation and at times to the Israel-Palestine conversation. You're right, he should have challenged Netanyahu on it. And I'm also worried that in this quest, X has gotten accused of being just having tons of anti-Semitism on the platform. The groups making those accusations, the Media Matters and the other anti-Semitic hate crime tracking organizations, the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, have a very bad track record, in my view, of honestly tabulating hate crime. So I don't really trust them when they tell advertisers that X is overrun with anti-Semitism. I don't de facto believe that claim, but they really have impacted X's bottom line by getting all these advertisers to disinvest. And so now, does Elon feel pressure to walk back his free speech commitments in order to fight anti-Semitism on the platform? Does that actually mean just fighting criticism of Israel? I'm sure Netanyahu would like that too. And so that is worrying to me, because he clearly is coming under a lot of pressure to police more speech, that is clearly legitimate. I think the phrase, from the river to the sea is not one that should be used, but absolutely it is within legitimate discourse to say that and to share that on Twitter. And he said recently that he wasn't going to allow users to do that. Again, I think that runs up against the free speech commitment. So, I don't envy him facing a lot of pressure from a lot of different very powerful interest groups who want him to fall short of ironclad free speech commitments. But I worry that he will cave and has already done so, given all of that pressure he's facing.
I can see a world where Elon Musk moves a little bit more towards, is this the kind of community we want to have on Twitter? He doesn't have to be the public square. He can just run X like any other social media platform where there are community guidelines. And sometimes these community guidelines, oftentimes, they are abused, they are misused, they're not perfect. But I can see a world where Elon Musk is like, okay, if you want to talk about, doing extremely violent things to a minority group of people, this isn't the place for that. That's not the kind of website we want this to be. If you want to have a meaningful conversation, if you want to talk about from the river to the sea and what that means, and even if you support it, you can post it. But I think maybe drawing the line around calling for violence would be a good thing to do to create a safe platform for discussion, because it sounds like Elon Musk is very much anti-violence. And so I think that's fair. I appreciate your point as well about Netanyahu probably deeming anything that is anti-Israel to be anti-Semitism, which just is ridiculous. And it's an idea that's held by the Netanyahu regime and government, but it's not an idea that's held in the hearts and minds of many Jewish people across the world and even in Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu is someone who said if the Arabs put down their weapons today, there would be no more violence. But if the Jews put down their weapons today, there would be no more Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu believes that the existence of Israel depends on the violence of the Israelis, that they need to be violent to maintain the state. They don't want Arabs in Israel. They want this to remain a Jewish ethno-state. They're not warding out violence. What they are doing is being violent in establishing an apartheid state where they intentionally keep out people who are Arab, people who are different from them. And so to have a country that's predicated on violence, I think makes him a very violent person. And so I think Elon Musk talking about the violence of Hamas terrorists, he should also say, we need to be able to have conversations about the violence of the Israeli state. Is that terrorism as well? I think it is when you kill 20,000 people and displace 1.7 million people. And so Twitter can be a place where you have those conversations, and they're not anti-Semitic. It has nothing to do, actually, with Judaism. It has to do with the violence of the Netanyahu regime and the violence of the Israeli state. And those two things are different. And I think those two things being conflated and censored is very dangerous.
More Rising right after this.